So there's a couple topics I want to cover today, largely around obviously the topic of SAC and the BI BOBJ suite of tools that SAP's historically had, how they play together, and how NIMBL can help you and SAP can help you get along that journey with SAC. So the first topic I'll talk about a little bit is SAP's analytics evolution, and then I'll spend probably the biggest bulk of the time on what is SAC and a little bit of a demo. For some of you, this may be a refresher, given that you might already have SAC deployed. You may have seen some sales demos or attended conferences or other webinars about SAC, but I think it's important to give you some background so everybody's on the same page, but also to let you know about some recent innovations that you might not be aware of with SAC. The demo, I'll talk to some of those features a little bit. Obviously, we could probably do a demo for 3 or 4 hours, so I'll try to keep it concise and just show you some highlights. And then we'll talk a little bit about making the move. So how does SAP, from a licensing perspective, support you in bringing SAC into your landscape? And then finally getting it done. How can NIMBL help you get that done? What are some quick and easy prepackaged solutions that we offer to get you started with SAC or to expand on your SAC journey if you're already there? So let's get into it. So the first topic obviously is SAP's journey. And this is a journey that I would say not just SAP is on, but the landscape in general, right? The analytics landscape. Most of you have seen this before. You're likely all analytics professionals. You've lived and breathed this for 10 years or so, right? Back when I started my career, we were really talking about descriptive analytics, BW reporting, BEX reporting, grid reporting. You know, sometimes people came with a stack of green bar printout reports and said, here, make me these, right? This is where we came from a standard reporting perspective where people were printing out reports, creating PDFs or formatted reporting. We moved up this scale over time, right, to do more ad hoc. So slice and dice based stuff. That's what BEX and tools like Essbase were really strong at. And we started moving up that curve with the introduction of some of the Business Objects suite of tools, with dashboarding and scorecards, with tools like Excelsius, then Design Studio, subsequently Lumira, gradually moving up this. As we go higher, obviously, we move from talking about what happened in the past to talking about why things happen. So doing that really inquisitive analytics as opposed to reporting. That's where you get into more of the data exploration, like SAP Explorer, but more recently with SAC, as well as other competitive products that tell you about why things occurred. And finally, you're moving up the model towards predictive. What will happen in the future, and what's the best thing we can do, or what's the best thing that can happen, and how, more importantly, can we affect that change? How can we make planning changes or supply chain changes, for example, that might affect what we see coming down the road? Obviously, in today's day and age, this becomes increasingly important. So we've got two main topics here, with two platforms that SAP offers right today. SAP Analytics Cloud for customers that are looking for the benefits of a cloud solution, so the elasticity, the security, the patching, the support, all the things you get out of the box. SAP Analytics Cloud is, as of roughly a year ago now, the strategic analytics platform for all of SAP applications. So this is an important point. We'll touch on it throughout this discussion, but SAP is intending for SAC, SAP Analytics Cloud, to be embedded in various cloud-based and on-prem solutions, for that matter, over time. So even if, from an analytics perspective, you're not choosing today for SAC to be your core platform, you will start to see it trickle in through tools like SuccessFactors, Ariba, Concur, and more importantly, S4. There's a lot of investment from SAP, obviously, in this tool. We'll talk a little bit about what differentiates SAC from both competitive tools in the landscape, but also from the BI Business Objects suite. So in terms of analytics, planning, prediction, and app development all in one place. But then you've got your Business Objects BI suite, right? If you prefer an on-premise solution, this is your best bet today from an SAP perspective. SAP would say that it's the best and most scalable enterprise reporting solution in the industry. I believe that to be somewhat true, although it's nuanced, right? Depends sometimes on the environment that you're in, the industry that you're in, as to whether or not you feel like that the Business Objects BI suite is meeting all of your needs. That's really where SAC comes into play. And it's a collection of mature and feature-rich tools, right? Reporting, dashboarding. It's been around the block for a while. I know some of you may have had struggles as 4.1 was rolled out, as I did in my prior lives in industry. But since then, the maturity and the evolution of the Business Objects suite is pretty strong, and it has a pretty big market penetration out there, right? So how do the two play together, right? And more importantly, what features in SAC are going to give you parity to what you get in the Business Objects BI suite? So we'll touch on those in the next slide here. But the point to be made is these two solutions play well together, but you'll find more and more that the features and functions that you need as an organization may very well be contained in SAP Analytics Cloud. So let's talk about the features in a few different categories here. So obviously the dashboarding, the ad hoc analytics, the data exploration, both of those are accomplished very well by both sets of tools. There's not a huge difference between, let's say, Lumira and SAC from a UI perspective and a feature perspective. Similarly, the ad hoc analytics, you can do both ad hoc analytics from a data visualization perspective, as well as from your analysis for office tool set, for example, which comes bundled with SAC. When you start to move down this chart, you start to see some more differences, right? So we talked about Excel integration, reporting and broadcasting. So notice this newly released feature. Some of these features here you may not be aware are now supported or will soon be supported in your SAC Cloud, SAP Analytics Cloud tenant. So those are reporting and broadcasting, which for those of you, which it sounded like from the poll question earlier, are using Webby, that's a key question. How do I get what I'm doing with Webby into SAC? And should I wait? Is it time to do that or not? It's beginning today, that journey from Webby functionality to SAC. When you start moving down into highly formatted reporting, or importantly, if you have a need from a data privacy protection perspective for an on-premise solution, you are still dependent on SAP Business Objects BI Suite. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just to be clear to yourselves, your organization, your leadership, that that's the case. And for these scenarios, we need an on-premise solution. For these, we may be able to talk about SAP Analytics Cloud. And then finally, when you go down to the bottom, you start to see more advantages start to pop up for SAC. As I mentioned before, you start talking about planning. You start talking about some of the augmented features. These are differentiators with SAP Analytics Cloud and things that really help it excel in the marketplace, not only in comparison to the SAP Business Objects Suite, but to other competitors in the market as well. Mobile, obviously, both do very well. And then finally, when you start to talk about S4 and other SAP app integration, this is really where SAC differentiates itself. As I said earlier, going forward, you will start to see SAC living natively within these cloud applications. Okay, so let's talk about the strategy from SAP for a second and what's their plan for the BI suite of tools. So you are all probably well aware that the upcoming release of BI 4.3, which is currently in beta, expectation of June timeline, confirmed just yesterday to me. So expect that to continue, right? SAP will give you 7 years from the date of GA. So that would be until at least 2027 that BI 4.3 would be available. The great thing about both this BI suite in the new release, as well as SAC, is they're increasingly emphasizing this hybrid analytics scenario where people need to have both. So don't feel nervous about that the two tools will continue to work together very well going forward. Okay, so that's a little background on SAC, the BI suite of tools, and how the two are kind of tracking side by side. Let's talk specifically about SAC and what some of its features and functions are that differentiate it from other tools out there. So as I said, SAC is one tool that can do both planning, discovery, prediction, collaboration, all in one place. This is very important, especially today, given our need to work remotely, our need to collaborate, to get away from this idea of emailing reports around or walking to people's desks to ask a question about a specific number. Having one platform that's cloud-based really gives an advantage today, and likely as this whole coronavirus scenario changes the way that we work, not just now, but perhaps forever. We may find that the organizations are saying, hey, that work from home thing, although it was somewhat disruptive, there's a percentage of our workforce that might benefit from working that way going forward. So we talked about one tool. Let's talk about why this scenario is so differentiates SAC so well. So being able to do planning, being able to do analysis, and being able to do predictive all in one place gives you the ability to close this loop, right, in one tool. In today's organizations, my career for the past 20 years, working for various organizations where their S&OP processes or their demand alignment processes were this disjointed calendar of events that took 2 weeks to process or even longer, where everybody was bringing printouts from different systems based on different dates and trying to align on a plan using some analysis and using some prediction was a very difficult and cumbersome process. And with SAC, really where we see at NIMBL some of the strengths coming are in the ability to close that gap. And a lot of eyes start to open when you say, oh, I can plan and predict and analyze all together. That's a key feature. I mentioned before about collaboration and working remotely. So let's talk about how those collaborative tools can help you. So collaboration, obviously, the ability to chat, exchange notes on a given cell value is critical. No more emails back and forth, no more printing stuff out and highlighting it, no more scribbling on whiteboards during meetings. Real time, so everybody's looking at the same numbers, right? I heard earlier in the poll that that's one of the driving factors behind a lot of your organizations. So the ability for everybody to look at the same number at the same time, so that you're not, looking at the email you got yesterday, or looking at the printout that somebody gave you yesterday, or looking at a batch report that doesn't tie to a different system. Getting all the data flowing through obviously is work and effort to do, but SAC is very good at connecting to and supporting that real-time analytics capability. Elastic, so again, if you're currently an on-prem customer with a given BI footprint, it can be difficult if all of a sudden you have a peak of demand. Perhaps some of you are in products or services that are impacted up or down because of this economic situation we're in today. The ability to scale up and down the number of users, as well as the horsepower behind the system, is key to a cloud-based solution. I just mentioned cloud-based solution, so patching, supporting, upgrading. SAC updates itself weekly these days. So new features and functions, gone are the days of having a $100,000 project to upgrade your BI enterprise server, regression test everything, and go through these cycles of consulting and internal costs. With the cloud-based solution, you're just getting all those updates automatically. Security, clearly, many of your businesses are not in the business of being a security firm. You may have a security team and a security department, but leaving that to somebody else and letting them handle it for you can be very beneficial. Obviously, for public sector or certain data that cannot pass through the public cloud, this is a separate issue. But for those of you that are able and comfortable to work in the public cloud, this can become a big advantage. Okay, so let's talk about planning really quick. Again, I'm going to breeze through a lot of these slides on the overview of SAC, simply because we don't have the time, and that's not really the purpose of this session today. But if you feel like any of these features or functions I'm discussing today are ones that you want to learn more about, we at NIMBL have recorded demos, we have scripted demos that we can give you, we have tailored demos. We can certainly follow up with a session specifically to some of these features. The first of which that's key, and I touched on before, is planning. Again, SAC Cloud for Planning, it's a separate SKU, it's an add-on to SAP Analytics Cloud. It's a separate subscription per user, but it's the same tenant. So one environment where you're doing all of planning, prediction, and analytics with some subset of your users that are assigned planning licenses where they're doing their collaborative planning functions. So all of these features, I'm not going to go through them all, supported in SAC Cloud for Planning. Augmented Analytics, so I'll touch on this now. I'll also show you some of these features with a demo that I have for later. Smart Discovery, this is the ability to quickly build a kind of dashboard that finds the insights in your data for you. The scenarios are quite powerful here, but really you start to get away from having business people spending days, weeks, producing PowerPoint presentations or digging through data to find answers, but rather letting the system find you some key influencers that you can then dive into deeper. Smart insights. So that's point level analytics. So you're on a chart, you're in a bar, and you want to know what's driving this. You can simply right click, choose the little light bulb icon, and SAC will tell you, hey, these are the dimensions that are really driving this change. Your revenue's up this month versus last. Why? Is it because cost of goods sold was lower this month? Is it because the customer mix was different? Is it because the geographic mix was different? Is it because the product mix was different? Quickly understand that so you can start honing in on what's affecting this change rather than simply spending days doing an analysis. And finally, natural language processing. So the ability to ask questions of your data using natural language. This is a huge area of investment, not only for SAP, but in the industry in general, to allow people to just simply type a question and get an answer. And I'll show you a quick demo of that later. So these are collectively referred to by SAP as augmented analytics, but you could talk about them as being smart tools or predictive tools or AI-based tools. Okay, next feature I want to touch on really quick is what's now called Analytics Designer. You may have heard it called Application Designer up until fairly recently, but SAP loves to rebrand things, and now they're calling it Analytics Designer. You would have referred to it as Design Studio perhaps in the past, or Lumira Designer more recently. So this is the ability with the same tool, with the same licenses, no additional cost per user, to develop custom applications based on your analytics data. This is a demo that SAP prepared and presents a lot based on that's interacting back and forth between S4 data, but using some custom widgets to really show you the power of analytics to make decisions and to actually affect things rather than just to look at data and say, oh, that's interesting. So again, this is Analytics Designer. Next is mobile, right? That's obviously a key feature. Recently, SAP now supports Android devices on their SAC mobile application. All of the stories and applications built with SAC, as long as they're done with a responsive page, will work on any device with any screen resolutions. So that's great. You design once, you view on multiple devices. There's no need to design multiple versions of a given dashboard or story for multiple devices. Next is SAP Analysis for Office. So you may have been aware in the past that there's a version that comes bundled with SAC. So some people call it A for O, some people just call it Analysis. But this is really the modern version of what was historically Beck's Analyzer. It's an Excel-based pivot tool. The version that was released I believe in December, January, now supports live connectivity. So this is a key feature here. With SAC now, you get a version of Analysis for Office that lets you interact with live data sets, both HANA and SAC. You may still require a licensed version of Analysis for Office if you're doing connectivity to other sources of data, and we could get into that in a follow-up session. But this is key for those of you who are sort of hanging on to your BI licenses because you had heavy deployments of Analysis for Office. Next is Data Analyzer. So this is a feature of SAC. It's a web-based feature, which really gives you some of the functionality that you would have seen in Analysis for Office, the ability to slice and dice, add data to columns and rows, and do this kind of ad hoc reporting yourself as a user without asking either IT or maybe a power user to build you a SAC story, okay? And finally, Digital Boardroom. You may hear about this a lot. This is probably something that if SAP was presenting the solution to you, they may emphasize, especially given, depending on the audience, right? If it's an executive level audience, Digital Boardroom can be a very powerful solution for that scenario where you have a group of executives in a room and they want to be able to interact with data and make decisions without everybody coming with a printout of paper or a PDF file or a PowerPoint file. that perhaps took somebody a week to prepare, you're simply looking at the data all together, the same data that your analysts and stakeholders are using in the business, all in one place. So you may have heard about our success earlier in the introduction with the San Francisco 49ers, a solution we built for them that allowed them to see real-time data during NFL games or other events at Levi Stadium using SAC, right? So they can interact with the data, zoom in on the data, slice and dice the data, and really see when trouble spots are popping up. So that's Digital Boardroom. Digital Boardroom itself is a separately licensed product because it requires separate hardware to run, physical machines that have a certain specification, but you can run a flavor of it or a simulation of it on multiple screens. As I said before, you design once and you can display SAP Analytics Cloud content on any device, including a screen, a touchscreen monitor in a boardroom. Okay, so let's talk a little bit. So those are all the features and functions that I wanted to highlight of SAC and some of the differentiators. Let's talk about how SAC and some of those things kind of mesh in with the larger SAP ecosystem, including Webby and S4. So starting up here at the top, SAC Analytics Cloud, they're referred to as stories rather than dashboards, but they effectively are dashboards. Complex visualizations as a big advantage. A disadvantage maybe, although this is a pretty weak disadvantage, I would say, is that you have to have connections to various systems to see real-time data. You're outside of that source system. So the scenarios are wide, but one of them would be an analytics specialist tasked with summarizing monthly revenue for the finance team. Moving down here to SAP Analytics Cloud Analytics Design, again, this formerly known as application design. So this is the example I showed earlier if you want to build something that's highly customized, but it takes a little more time to develop something in this space. And it's not, I would not advocate building everything as an application. Lots of design time required. Analysis for Office we touched on before. This is really, in some organizations, the bread and butter tool, the meat and potatoes tool, whatever analogy you want to use, the tool that gets the work done and that most of the business lives in, where they slice and dice. So importantly, again, with SAC today, a version is bundled that does support those live connections that many people depend on. Moving down to the last two here, S4's embedded analytics. Many of you may be on an S4 journey or already on an S4 journey, already have S4 deployed. Depending on your version, if it's cloud or on-prem and what version of cloud, you will start to see SAC become embedded in your S4 system. But as of today, for most organizations, you're using what SAP refers to embedded analytics. These are pretty weak in their full capabilities from a, selfishly from an analytics professional's perspective, but they still give some analytics in the hands of their users. This is point of application information, no development time. And then finally, Webby, right? This requires an additional license beyond what's up here, but clearly many of you are using Webby and many organizations in the country and the world are still using Webby. It's a great tool. It's a bit more limited in terms of complex visualizations. Obviously, it doesn't have the planning and predictive capabilities that you'd see in SAC. Okay, so that was a lot. I'm just going to take a breath. I hope everybody's still following. I'm going rather quick. Let's talk about some of the areas that SAC is investing in, some of the key innovations that we're seeing this year and next from a roadmap perspective. And I'm going to just highlight some that I think would be relevant for enterprises like yourselves, which have SAC deployed today. Which have business objects deployed today. Okay, so the first one I want to talk about is enterprise reporting. I mentioned this earlier. This is the ability to produce paginated reports with headers and footers to schedule and export them. There is a version today that is available in some SAC tenants, which allows for this, and we'd be happy to discuss as a follow-up what the limitations are today and when we expect some or all of these features to be available. Many of you may be hinging a lot of your deployment on SAC on this topic alone, I'm guessing. The next one I touched on before, but the embedding of SAC into SAP core applications. And then finally, this hybrid scenario. So this is key. This is really the thesis of this conversation today is how does this hybrid connectivity work? You see SAC connectivity directly to Webby, and then this analysis for office integration, which I talked about earlier. A few others to note that are important is predictive live connectivity. So the ability to connect live to live data and use all those predictive features is important. There are some limitations on universe support for this, for those smart and predictive features. Again, probably don't have the time to get into the details of them today, but in Q&A, maybe we can answer a couple there. And then finally, the Office 365 add-in. For those of you who do not want to deploy a desktop tool and you'd rather move all cloud, the ability to have cloud-based Excel, i.e. Office 365, and its plugin for what would be similar to analysis for Office today. Okay, so those are some of the key features. This enterprise reporting slide here is really just a couple screenshots. I know they're probably difficult to see, but the lab's preview of what SAC's capabilities are in terms of reporting. A lot of this will look very similar to what you're doing in Webby and maybe even with Crystal. Okay, so I've taken enough time speaking. Let's look at a quick little demo of some stuff that we've built, just that's probably a bit current with today's environment. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is show you a brief demo of SAP Analytics Cloud. So what I've done here is I've logged into our NIMBL demonstration tenant for SAP Analytics Cloud, and this will look very similar for you as you first log in for the first time to an SAP Analytics Cloud tenant. And what you see here is several widgets that are provided as a default. You can certainly customize these as much as you want, but you'll see here my recent stories, a sample bar chart, and a sample numeric point chart. Each of these is referred to as a widget. You can remove and add to these as much as you see fit. I'm going to use a data set today that comes delivered by SAP as a sample content known as SAP's best run juice company. So that has some sample sales data for a fictitious juice company. So the first thing I want to show is this search to insight feature. So what I'm going to do is simply ask a question of the data to try to get some insight. So imagine I'm a business person. I don't know where to find my answer, but I just want to see if that answer exists in the data and just to get started quickly. So I'm going to start by typing show me quantity sold, and you'll notice it's found that measure quantity sold in this data set, best run juice. And I'm going to say by product, and I want to see this as a bar chart. So I'm going to say as a bar chart, simply hit enter. So search to insight here is searching the data, and it's found that data and it's charted it for me here. So I say, oh, that's interesting. I want to use that and explore it a little more. So I can simply go here and copy this, and it's on my clipboard now. And I can open up a new story. So let's say I have a story here, and I want to paste that chart in. I can simply Control V for paste, and I've pasted that in. Now this is interesting. I'll delete this other one. This is interesting to me, but I'd really like to see it over time, and I'd like to see the breakdown of each of these categories over time. So using the editor panel over here, I'm going to change the chart type to a stacked bar. And then because I have the dimension now as dimensions, I have this new attribute here, color. It's a stacked bar. So I'm going to move this down as part of the color. And you can see now I've stacked everything into one, but I want to break this down over time. So I'm going to add a dimension for time here as add dimensions. I'm simply going to pick date. And now you can see, again, it's still one number, but this number says all, and it's actually drillable. So I'm going to hide this panel for a second. And if I click into this, you can see that I can click down into the data. Now I've broken it out by year. If I said I want to see this broken down even further, I could drill down even further into 2016. And if I want to break down the first half of 2016, I could drill down further like this. So now we've got half of 2016 broken out by each of the categories of product that I sell. And I could build onto this and make a much more advanced story using this data. So let's take a look at one that we've pre-developed that's using the same data set with showing off a lot more of the features of SAP Analytics Cloud. So this is that same data set, again, presented in a little bit of a different way. So you've got some numeric KPIs up at the top, and then you've got two different charts showing the same thing, but this one by time and this one simply by product category. And we're using something called linked analysis in this, which is a very powerful feature of SAC. As you can see, if I click through on one of these categories on the side, so let's say I'm interested in juices, I click on juices, it is now filtered here the other chart elements to just show those juices. And I could continue, I could drill down into these numbers here. So now I'm breaking out juices by the types of juices, and this chart is also reflecting that filter. If I zoom in on the time horizon here, you can see more and more detail and insight onto those specific facts. If I wanted to remove that filter, I could simply go here and remove it here. And on this side, I could drill back up the hierarchy to take me back to the top. So let's look at a couple other interesting and cool features of SAC as far as charting goes and some of its capabilities. So on this page now we have a few other chart types. So you've got a bar chart, you've got a couple other line charts, and you've got a scatter plot down below. Each of these is linked together through what's called linked analysis. So if I click over here on one of my sales managers and I just want to know how has Nancy been doing, I can simply click on her. And now every other chart on this page is filtered just to show Nancy. Maybe I want to exclude Nancy. Maybe Nancy's no longer with my team and I don't want to report last year's sales or last month's actuals, including her. I could simply click over here and click on this little X. And now you'll notice that I've filtered her out. You no longer see her here and it's telling me that I have a filter applied. Again, I could click on it and see the filter, and I can click this little X to remove the filter if I wanted to. Another interesting feature that I think is increasingly important with a tool like SAP Analytics Cloud is the ability to collaborate and comment. You'll see on this chart here that I've got a small icon indicating there's a comment present. If I click on that comment, I can see a comment that I created, obviously, but I could also reply to it, thanks, and send that comment. And the recipient of that would receive a notification. These comments can also be voted up and down or deleted if I no longer need them. You will see, as I mentioned earlier, some improved functionality in this commenting coming forward, which will give it much more of an S4-like user experience. Okay, so again, different chart types here, the same interactivity here, the ability to zoom or the ability to simply click up here on 6-month intervals, 1-year intervals, etc. Moving on to another page in this demonstrative content, we have a geolocated chart. So this is a map using the same data. As long as you have a geo-relevant field, a dimension in your data, you can map that data and you can overlay multiple chart types. So in this case, there's a heat map and a bubble chart in one chart, in one widget, I should say. The next one is something I mentioned earlier. So this is the predictive or forecasting ability of SAC out of the box. You can see here that we've got actuals leading up to, in this case, the end of 2016, and then forecasted data, right? This is a data set that does not contain 2017 data. So this line here has been extrapolated automatically by SAC, and it's giving you a confidence bound. So where does it feel the data is going to land based on perhaps some noise in the historical data? If I expand this time, you can see the reason for that confidence is because we've had some ups and downs in our data set. Obviously, if the data set was smoother, the confidence bound here would be a lot narrower. You can also see down below that it's giving you some insight. The gross margin for 2016 is the top contributor, 57%. Gross margin variation was driven significantly by product, orange pulp. So what's driving this variability in the data is the orange juice with pulp. There's some variability in sales or in the gross margin. Therefore, my predicted gross margin has a bit of variability in it. So I could drill further into that if I wanted to. Moving on to the final thing I want to demonstrate or inform you of today is really the machine learning regression analysis. So whereas this time forecast is automatic, I simply have to put the data in and tell it that I want to see a forecast, it will apply that automatically. In the third section here, or third example, I've actually written a predictive algorithm that has taken some of that data and done some machine learning against it to provide a regression analysis. So this is predictive values for the future. These are not based on actual data in the data set, but rather predictions that SAC has generated out of the box. So these are just some of the high level cool new functions of SAC that I think are valuable for you to understand, and I hope it makes sense to you. So let's jump back into the slides now. Making the move. Let's talk about how SAP supports you in moving to a hybrid environment with SAC. So as you may or may not be aware, there are now 3 different licenses that you can reduce yourselves to if you're a current BI license SAP Business Objects Enterprise customer. The new Edge Edition, which removes Explorer and dashboards and gives you a 14% reduction in your maintenance base cost. A new Enterprise version that gives you a 22% reduction in your maintenance base cost, and a new SKU that's just Webby. So you could right-size, downsize your install base to just have SAC and Webby if that's what you need, as of very recently. So this is a pretty good savings. You can also, as part of what SAP is calling their cloud conversion program, reduce the number of licenses that you currently have, or the metrics you're using to measure those licenses. So your license quantity effectively can go down, as well as the functionality. So consider this functionality reduction. Both of these are removing Explorer and dashboards. And with this Webby only license, you're removing all tools except for Webby. Here, you can also reduce the number of licenses. The key thing to understand with this, that after this reduction, you're moving here from a maintenance base to a lower maintenance base. You can use that savings, or you must use that savings, to acquire new cloud licenses from SAP. Those could be SAP Analytics Cloud, but they could also be other SAP Cloud technologies. So this is a very good program for many customers that want to make this move, but they don't want to sort of throw the baby out with the bathwater. They want to keep some of their installed licenses while growing their business. So here's a scenario, an example. If you're a customer currently with Business Objects Enterprise Professional, you can reduce both the quantity and functionality of your tool, replace that with SAP Cloud subscriptions, and therefore reduce your overall spend from if you were to add Power BI or Tableau. In both of those scenarios, you'd be required to maintain your full license maintenance base for Business Objects Enterprise. So I hope that's clear. Obviously, the nuances of this may require a conversation between either you and us or you and your SAP account executive. We'd be happy to support that conversation. Okay, finally, in the interest of time again, I'm going to cover how NIMBL can help you and some ways, prepackaged tools, methodologies that we have to get you into an SAC hybrid landscape. So 3 areas that we really like to emphasize. The first being analytics strategy. For some organizations, really what the first thing you need to do is, what is our plan here? What do we currently own? How many users do we have? How happy are those users? Do we have the right tool for the right job? So this is an enterprise strategy alignment, an architecture assessment, and what we call our Edge Plus methodology for user profiling and tool evaluation. So what does that look like? It's a strategy. It's a set of tools, templates, and processes that we bring to bear for clients on sometimes small engagements for just a couple of weeks, where myself or some of my colleagues come on site, or in today's day and age, have a couple of remote sessions with you and your business users to understand their needs and what tools they need to meet those needs. So that comes up with business objectives, user personas, and processes and assets to achieve those needs. So that's the first one, the analytics strategy. The second one is SAC Pilot. So we offer and have had great success recently. In the past year, we've done many of these pilots where customers just simply want to get their hands on this tool, and they want a leader in the space to help them do that. So 3 different flavors here again: SAC Pilot, standalone, you bring your own data, we help you put an SAC system on top and build you some dashboards. An SAC Pilot with HANA, so either you bring your own HANA system or we provide one or help you acquire one. And then finally, one with BW4. So what do these look like? Again, I'm not going to get into detail. You can use an SAC trial, you can bring your own, or you can bring your own license, and we can help you with all of these services. And the next one that I mentioned before, you can use an SAC trial. Plus, in many cases, we've had success with HANA Express. That means you don't have to go out and do a big acquisition with SAP just to get going, but really you can start to show some value quickly and help build the business case internally and how SAC can play in your landscape. And then finally, as I mentioned, similar kind of scenario, but one where you need some assistance in also BW or Business Objects universe modeling. Finally, SAC training. Here's just a little view of what we're talking about here. We've recently started great success with this, especially because a lot of customers are working remotely. We can give a tailored training for you and your users, you and your business people, or just a smaller group internally in IT. We have pre-delivered lecture content that can be customized for your needs with exercises, really giving a lot more value than you'd get necessarily out of an SAP class, especially given that today it's difficult to get that personal connection. So that was a lot. In summary, SAP Analytics Cloud is powerful, it's ready. It's not like a tool that's maturing still and growing up. It's ready and being deployed very widely today. You can analyze, you can plan, you can predict all in one place. Innovations continue to close these feature gaps between the SAP Business Objects suite and SAC. The SAP on-premise suite is not going away, however. You're going to have still 7 more years of support. There's no rush, but you can right-size your investment there and help balance between SAP Analytics Cloud and your Business Objects on-prem environment. Cloud conversion program can get you there. That's the name of SAP's program. If you want to learn more from us or from SAP, I would encourage you to reach out. And finally, as I said, NIMBL can help you get started in a variety of ways. So with that, I know we have 13 minutes left. Sorry, I went a little bit over my allotted time because we want to allow a significant time for questions. I will open it up to Q&A and hand the mic back to Will to field some of those questions. Thank you.
All right, terrific presentation, Barnaby. We do have a couple questions in the chat. The first one is from Jim, and his question is, how is SAC licensed? Do I get access to all the features in this presentation?
Yeah, so there's essentially just 3 license models. It's all per user. So the first one is for SAP Analytics Cloud, which gives you the majority of the features which I reviewed today. Again, that's per user. There's a separate license for SAP Cloud for Planning that gives you the planning functions. There is quite a great promotion happening at the moment, honestly. If you're a BPC customer today and you want to try SAP Cloud for Planning, the savings is something like 70% today, and that would continue forever if you were to license SAP Cloud for Planning in 2020. And then the third, which is for digital boardroom. That's a separate license and requires separate hardware.
All right, we got another question from Jardin Yi, and his question is, I would like to see how enterprise reporting works in SAC. Can you just touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult for me to demo it for you now, given the time, but we'd certainly love to follow up with you perhaps and show you what it looks like. It's very new. I mean, it was released about a month ago, so we are evolving with SAP. I think many of you probably have the same question. What does that look like? Because that sounds pretty, I didn't know you could do that. Broadcasting, scheduling, PDF generation, headers and footers, formatting, that kind of thing. So it's probably best in a follow-up session.
All right, we've got another question here from Alyssa. We've had limited success with Lumira and Lumira Design. Does SAC replace Lumira?
The short answer is yes, unless you're an on-premise customer who cannot put your data in the cloud. So they'll continue to support Lumira Designer for those customers, mostly in public sector, healthcare industries, where putting data in the cloud is a no-no for them. But effectively, yeah, the functionality in analysis, I keep wanting to call it application designer still, is on parity today with Lumira Designer and will continue to innovate there. I think you'll see more innovation on the SAC side than you do in Lumira though.
Okay, and another question from Wendy. My company has countless Webby reports. If we decide to upgrade to SAC, are we going to have to rebuild all those reports?
The short answer is yes. There is a tool, an SAP Note, that allows you to do some analysis of how many you have and to assist you with that migration. But the bottom line is, yes, you would have to rebuild them. But the question would be, especially given our Edge Plus methodology and our ability to engage with the users and understand what they're trying to do, can you take one SAC dashboard or story and replace many Webby reports and kind of change the mindset of the user from being more of a spoon-fed, feed me the data, to I'm going to go out and ask the questions of the data and get the answers I need myself. So it's a paradigm shift. But if the business said, nope, we need it to be exactly like this, then yes, you'd effectively have to rebuild many of those things.
All right, well, that does it for the questions. Do you have any final thoughts, Barnaby?
No, the only thing I would comment on is there are a few appendices here. Obviously, if you want to reach us, you can contact us through this address here, bnimble.com/contact. I'd be happy to have even just a short call with any or all of you about your needs and about how NIMBL and SAC could help you achieve those needs.
All right, terrific. That does it for our webinar from BOBJ to SAC. Thank you all for attending, and you can expect to receive an on-demand version of this webinar in the next couple days.